welcome back. So hi again, everyone. Before we get started, it'd be interesting to know about who's in the audience a little bit more. So please put your hands up if you're currently a games developer. So all the games developers, I expect to have your hands in the air. Yes, don't be shy. And if you're wanting to be a games developer, please put your hand up in the air. Okay, and is it students currently or other roles looking to... Okay, great. So we'll start off with my panel introducing themselves. So if we can just take a few minutes just talking about what you do, how you got into the industry, what your company does, and what you're doing there. And so we'll start with Katy at the end.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. So my name is Katy Marshall. I am a digital maker, digital artist, designer, and tech educator. I might have to explain what each of those means. So I do a number of different things. I don't just do one thing. I've kind of dipped my fingers into a number of different pies, which means I never have free time, but I'm always doing really, really interesting projects. So at Digital Maker, I work at a makespace in Cambridge. I work with laser cutters, 3D printers, I do electronics, and I do wood crafting and soldering. I use my computer with Illustrator and other tools to help create ideas that I then make physical with those tools I just mentioned. I do it for either design, I do it for custom controllers, or I do it for products for clients to do with graphic design or branding. I'm currently working for a design company in Cambridge called 10 Creative, and we specialize in doing branding and strategy for tech companies. So all the stuff that I just mentioned about laser cutting and 3D printing, I got started with all that because I went to a summer camp in America, and that gave me, kind of sparked the want to learn all that stuff, but also to teach kids. So when I came back to England, along with developing my own skills and getting better at them and making really cool things, I wanted to continue teaching other people. So not just kids, though I do teach a lot of kids how to do this stuff. I'm also open to teaching anyone that's interested, really. And so I write workshops and I run workshops, mainly in Cambridge, but I've done them all over the place. Yeah.
Awesome. Louise?
Thanks. Hello. Excellent. I'm Louise. I'm producer and studio manager at Cooperative Innovations with Simon, which is excellent. Before I got into games, I've had like a bit of a sideways journey, and it's a little bit unusual. But I previously did a lot of admin jobs, finance jobs, and I also was an academic, all at the same time. I might talk about it later. And I've got a background in humanities, so my degrees are in English. And then I somehow discovered I was quite good at project management, and then I discovered, to my absolute delight, that there's basically a job in games for project managers, and that's production. So my job is to look after the game development process from start to finish and make sure it's on time, that it's on budget, and that it's to quality. And also to make sure that the team, the developers who are making the game, are happy and productive people. Yeah. I'm done.
Cool. Zai?
My name's Zai. I'm a level designer at Sumo Digital at the Sheffield studio. Most recently worked on Hitman 2 on the Santa Fortuna level with a team of small level designers there. I went to university at Teesside, studied game design, a couple of years in QA, and kind of the rest of my career working in design from there, really. So pretty much what I just said before in the talk.
Cool. And so my background so I started 20 years ago in games, started programming at a very, very young age, sort of 6 years old, about 30 years ago, and got into games early as a programmer, and then set up my first studio 2005, grew that to about 30 people, and then Cooperative Innovations started 2016, grown to about 14 people now, including Louise, of course, and we've got a mix of people doing virtual reality and augmented reality games, experiences, applications, wide range of stuff, but all using kind of Unreal Engine and game-making tools to do various VR and AR. Cool. So in terms of my questions, and everyone else needs to be thinking of their questions for when I run out in a minute. Networking came up a few times this morning and the other talks. Do you have any specific sort of tips in terms of how to network? How do you go and talk to developers at these various events to get into the industry and to sort of make those initial contacts? Who wants to start?
So one of the other things I also do in my spare time is I manage the Cambridge game dev community. So Back in 2014, when I first worked at a summer camp, I met Alexander Johansson, the guy in the back who's currently waving. And he was based up in Yorkshire at the time, and we were both working in the game design department, and he was telling me about all the communities and all the networking events he went to in Yorkshire and in other parts of the country. And this was at the time when I hadn't even thought about going to any of these networking events. I still am quite introverted, and the idea of going to go talk to random strangers for fun, to be able to say, what do you do, terrified me. But I realized that he was talking about all the contacts he'd made. He was talking about all the free tickets he was getting to different events just because he knew people. And I realized, like, I would have to start talking to people. So I started going to socials. I started going to whatever events I could. But obviously, I was quite shy. I was awkward as well about figuring out what to talk about, how to talk to people, how to also like end conversations with people to move on to the next person, but also how to prepare myself. And the one thing that really helped is that if I was working on projects, it was always good because it meant that I felt like I could be in that environment. I know that there's this whole thing about imposter syndrome that a lot of people might have, especially students, that if they don't have a project or they don't have a games project, they don't quite feel like they're allowed to be in that space and talk to these people and make contacts. But it's dumb. You feel welcome in them because you're interested in the industry, and that's already a way for you to be talking to reasons why you should be talking to those people. But what's really important is like knowing how to like talk to them, but also like when to move on from that conversation. It seems really weird, but it's the amount of times I've been talking with people, and there's a part of me that's like, I really want to leave this conversation now, but I don't know how to say that politely. But like, I've talked to you for 20 minutes, I want to talk to other people. But knowing when to stop a conversation and go is a really good social skills to learn, I think. Yeah. But generally just like throwing yourself in the deep end as often as you can and just talking to people really helps.
Cool. Any other comments?
Yes. So I used to find the word networking like really intimidating because it's like formalizing. It's like really formalizing something that you do on an everyday basis. Because it's like, oh, I'm just being a normal person, but suddenly it's like in a professional environment. So in order to kind of deal with that, it's quite similar. I'm also quite introverted. I will kind of just just be myself in the networking situation. Just be like, this is me, this is who I am, and I'm not going to try and be something else, because if I do that, I get really stressed, and then it all crumbles and falls apart anyway, so I might as well just be like who I am. And another thing that really helps me at networking events is, well, actually a couple of things, is to have goals. So if I'm going for a professional reason, I will identify why I'm going, who I want to talk to, what I want to get out from it, and that like helps me stay focused. And then the second thing that I have is kind of related, an exit plan, that if I know what I want to do for that event, I can do it, and I will do that thing. And if I might do something else, then that will be a bonus. If I know that I can leave if I want to, then it feels like it's okay to do. Because networking is hard, and it does get tiring, and some of the games events are like really, really long and intense. So it's important to like take breaks and stuff. And just remember that like everyone else is also like human as well. Sorry, I went on a tangent.
They're both really good answers. Not much more to add, but game developers typically like talking about games and about their jobs, so don't be scared. Obviously, the more you talk to people, the easier it becomes over time as well. It's kind of helpful maybe sometimes not to swarm a game dev, but you know, if you go with a friend, it kind of makes it a bit easier. Or it's also if you have a portfolio piece as a talking point, you can show them, and they can see that, and it starts to start the conversation going. That makes it easier. But yeah, just get yourself out there, really.
Cool. So we've got a mix of larger companies, so Sumo and Team 17, obviously. Rebellion now in the area as well, so a lot of large studios as well as the smaller studios. I mean, ourselves, we're currently 14, and my previous studio 35, but those are kind of small to medium kind of sized businesses. Any sort of thoughts in terms of pros and cons applying to those different places, what it's like to be at a different studio size and the benefits and drawbacks of that?
Yeah, sure. So, as I said before, Sumo is pretty big now, but we still try to retain that smaller sort of culture. Even at Sheffield, we're a multi-team, multi-project studio, so it's not like you're just a small cog in a machine, really. You get to have good creative input. And the benefits of being in a bigger studio is that we have a lot of different specializations, and that helps you to kind of learn from a lot of people as well in the type of skills that you want to learn. Also, we get to do a lot of different types of projects in different genres for different platforms. So those are all really sort of really good advantages to working in a bigger studio.
I think from like my perspective as a producer, it's really, really different like across the sizes of studios and the people who are within like the teams. So I've worked in like, I guess you call like a bedroom indie, like basically a 2-person team in Cornwall, and I wasn't even like in the same room as them, freelance producing, and that was absolutely tiny, a very tiny team, to a team of like about 25, 30 people. But it's not so much about size. I think it's more about the projects that you're doing, I think like you were saying, and the people and the dynamics within the team. So like if you are in a bigger team, you'll have like maybe 1 or 2 projects or more than that. And as a producer, you've got to kind of learn how the people work within the team, like individually, but also how the teams work as a whole. It's quite a lot, but it's good, and I like both. But I personally prefer smaller studios, just because it's like less work. But yeah, that's me.
Cool. So in terms of the sort of educational side of it, we mentioned people who've gone through university, people who haven't, and sort of different routes. But YouTube was mentioned earlier in terms of there's online courses to take as well. Katy, do you have any sort of specific ideas in terms of other resources for people to use for finding out or experimenting themselves if they don't have those things available to them?
Generally the internet, but like the internet's wonderful. The fact that I think maybe 10 or so years ago, if I was trying to learn any new skills, probably more than 10 years ago, actually, it might have been 15 years ago, if I was wanting to learn a new skill, it'd be going to the library, though that's still a good place to go and get resources, always. We always need libraries. But today's day and age, if you want to learn anything, YouTube is like the place to go more often than not. I mean, you've got places like, you've got platforms like Skillshare, digital tutors, or I think they're now called Pluralsight. Yeah, Pluralsight is it now? I mean, I used that, and that was like phenomenally better than the course I was currently on, like the content but also just the direction, the fact that the minute the video started, they were like, this is what we're going to do, and they did it, was fantastic. But it generally depends on what it is you're wanting to learn. I think you're going to have to try and be very specific about the skill you're wanting to develop, and you can't just be like, teach me game design. It's like, that's broad. Like, what about game design do you want to learn? Do you want to learn how to make your characters look good when they're moving? Do you want to learn how to make a really cool mechanic? Do you want to learn how to be better with flow theory, stuff like that? And that will take time for you to figure out what those things are. Anytime you want to learn a new skill, it's like you're looking at it as a big grand thing, and then you go like look in more deep, and then once you pick an element, that's when you can then start searching for it. But the internet's generally the place to be. But it's also looking at places when you've got events like this happening and looking at the workshops that they do, because it's always good, I find, to be learning it with a person. Obviously, you've got your lectures and your teachers and whatever you're doing, but if you can, jump in on workshops where people, well, you've got like Stuart who's teaching a wonderful workshop, and then when me and Alex do workshops about custom controllers, it's always nice if you can jump in on those, especially when they're free, just be able to learn from the people, because I mean, we keep talking about wanting to put videos on YouTube, and that's just probably not going to happen for a while longer, but if you just come and talk to us, you're going to get information quite quickly. But generally the internet, but if you can, face-to-face, and try and jump in on workshops when they're available.
Brilliant, thank you. And yes, we do have the workshop still going on at the back, and across in the Tetley, we'll have another one of the paper workshops going on, so please, after this, jump across there. Any questions from the audience? Everyone was prepped for this. There you go, one at the back.
I know I asked this of you earlier, but it's how do you manage your time when it comes to like, say working a full-time job and then having sort of side projects and passion projects aside from then? How do you manage the time to work both on them, have a personal life, and sort of the issues that come with all of it? I know you spoke about how you don't have a great deal of time at all.
So I'm very bad at that, but so I'm getting better. But 2018, so I'm also I technically am a freelancer. I'm a sole trader, and I do a number of different projects. 2018, I was doing residency, client projects, custom controller projects, design projects. Generally, just like someone said, "Hi, do you want to work for like 2 days a week, and I'll pay you?" And I was like, "Pay my bills? Yes, please." But also fund me for my next cool project that I really want to do. That sounds great. It's one thing to say try and manage your time, but you've also got to factor in how good is your time estimation. Because it's so easy to be like, I got this really cool idea, or I've got this personal project that I want to work on. I'm sure I can get it done in a weekend. You probably won't. I've actually tried, I had a friend tell me, double your time or triple your time. I've actually had to quadruple my time, because that's more on point. Like, I actually just finished a project where I said to somebody, I estimate it'll take me a day, and therefore I said, hey, it's going to take me 2 days. It took me 5 days. So I'm having a nice conversation about getting paid for that, considering I poorly underestimated it. You've got to be very brutally honest when it comes to how long you think it's going to take you. If you've done it before, it's probably easier to guess and to estimate, but if you haven't, just blow it out of proportion straight away. And another one is, what was it? It's just documenting what you do. Even if it's a personal project, I have gotten into the habit now of having my Google Calendar just filled with everything that I've done, just so I know that, because for whatever reason, if I go back a year later to be like, what did I do this time last year? I can at least see, but it's good to be able to see how active you're being and how much you're doing. But what's also really important is taking a break, if you can. Crunch is great. No, crunch is not great. Crunch is bad, and it's great that we're talking about how bad crunch is. That's what I meant to say. Not that crunch is great. It's really not. But it's really easy for you, especially when you're working at a job that's paying you, and it's great, to then be like, I want to work on a personal project. But you got to keep in mind that your personal projects are still working. No matter how great they are and how much fun you're having, how much skills you're learning, you're still working, and you've got to make sure you take a goddamn break. I have not been doing that recently, and I'm paying for it all the time. So just take care of yourself, bottom line. Always weigh up whether or not you should be working on the project, or if you should just go chill somewhere with a friend, or just sleep, one or the other.
Excellent. I get really excited about time management. This is my job. So I look after like my own time, but also like the time of the team and the time of the project, and it's kind of all connected. And then there are like some rules of thumb that I use, and like probably the first one is to predict failure. So if you know you've got something that you need to do, like a project, before you even start, you think, what is going to go wrong here? And then you write down what's going to go wrong, and then you write a response to that. So it's like, oh, so if that happens, I could do this. If that happens, I could do that. And then you know in advance that if things do go wrong, you've got a plan for that. And also, I normally use like about a 20% time rule. If someone estimates time or I estimate time, I'll probably add on about 20% on top of that. But it really depends on the person as well. In like a game dev studio, if you're running a project and you're looking after the team members, you kind of need to know how every individual person works and what they say what they mean when they say this will be quick or this will be a day, because different people mean different things. So plan for failure, and everyone is different, I think, on that.
Just to add to those is, I'd say, important things to take into account is, one, goal setting. What it is that you actually want to achieve on any given day, weekend, week, and be realistic with yourself. You know, you don't go out set to try and create Skyrim or something like that. You know, think realistically about what it is you want to achieve and for what reasons. And the other thing is using your time efficiently. It's kind of easy to procrastinate, to get distracted by, social media, or maybe I'll just watch something, this really short video for a moment. Give yourself a stop clock. Say, I'm going to work solidly for an hour or something. Stick to what you're doing. Take a break. Do something else. If you have more time that evening or whatever, come back and do another session. But yeah. Use time efficiently and set realistic goals.
Cool. And I think the CEO and studio head answer, despite the fact we don't do any crunch for the team, is that I just don't sleep, basically. It feels like that. Any other questions from the audience? Yep.
I was just asking regarding whether you have like support in place for people with like learning difficulties. Like I've got ADHD and I'm slightly dyspraxic, and just wondered if you had like like a system that helps staff with those kind of issues.
Yes, the answer is yes. We very much take it on like an individual case basis, but there are people in our company who are disabled or consider themselves to be disabled. And every game company and game company is different, and it really depends on like where you are. But if you go for an interview somewhere and you think it's going to be important to you to have support, then you mention it then. Or you could look on the website and see if they've got anything on the website about it. Some bigger companies, I imagine Sumo will have like a big like HR section, and they will help you, or they might have an occupational health person, they can help you. But with the smaller companies, you just make sure before you start that they're going to be like okay with that. And we definitely are, like, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard it's like the law under the Equality Act. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Cool. Okay. So I'll go back to my amazing list. So we spoke earlier, obviously, I had Chloe chatting about QA as a sort of a great route into all kinds of different roles in the industry. Would you say that's a recommended thing if someone isn't able to go to university or to learn sort of programming or artwork or have those sort of skills? What are thoughts on that?
I got into the industry by going to QA first. I think it's different for different people, different circumstances, what studio you're applying to, etc. It can be a really useful way to get in, but I think the key thing is your portfolio, and you can skip that and still land yourself a job in the role that you want to be in. QA can be used as a stepping stone sometimes, and it's a career path in its own right as well. But if you create a really high quality portfolio, that is evidence that can demonstrate that you can do what is going to be asked of you in the job that you're going for. So I think portfolio is the most important thing.
Great, and I just realised we're running out of time, so we'll just go with one more amazing tip from each of my panellists. So I'll give them about 10 seconds of filler time to think of that amazing tip for you. So portfolio, obviously, I'll take that as my one tip. Build a good portfolio, regardless whether it's coding, artwork, or anything else. Just show that you've done something more than whether it's the course you're doing or the YouTube video you've copied doing some work for in Unity or Unreal. Just showing you've got that creative flair and the intelligence behind it to do those different things that you've tried. So which way should we go? Who's feeling more confident first? Start with Uzai.
I think just understand the role that you want to apply for. Know what it is, the skill set that you need to develop. There's no point, creating audio if what you want to be is an environment artist and modelling. That obviously applies to bigger studios where it's more specialised positions.
I'm going to steal Jamie's, what he said earlier, because it's also my top tip of all time, which is work hard and be nice. When you get a job, which you will, be professional and be just a good egg, and you'll just, it'll be fine.
I think what to add to all of that. Good portfolio, yes. Being a nice human being, yes, because people will remember you if you're not, and they won't want to have you work anywhere else. My personal thing is be always just developing yourself when it comes to skill sets. It's great if what you're using tool-wise is like the key thing that the industry is using. I mean, I don't see anyone else like usurping Adobe anytime soon, but it's always good to just be on the lookout for new tools for you to develop. The one thing that was pointed out to me when I was doing a hackathon with kids was that someone who'd been in the games industry was saying that 20 years ago, the jobs that were available were there was 10 jobs. Like you're an artist, a programmer, designer, developer, producer. And then 10 years later, you've now got 15 other types of job types. Every year, new technology is coming out, so new requirements for what people need to do are coming out. So whatever you're looking at as a job right now, that's great, but chances are there's going to be careers that we've never even heard of that are going to come into existence in a couple of years or even next week. So be on the lookout for the fact that new stuff's coming out, new things are being developed. It could very well be the ideal job for you is just around the corner. So just develop skills and be ready for anything new that's going to come around because people are going to want them because just like what I was mentioning with media, old people don't quite know games, so talking and writing about them, they have no idea how to do that. But they need people to write about games in newspapers. So that's like a development. So keep on the lookout for that.
Awesome. Great tips. Thank you. So thank you very much to my panelists. Round of applause for them, please. So we are open till 4 p.m. So please feel free to try all the games, the wonderful games we've got on Showcase here. We've got retro games on this side. We've got the workshop at the back and across in the Tetley. We've got Tilt Brush by Google, sort of 3D art VR package. 2 setups of that, and we've also got a single-player version of one of our new titles, kind of in development. The other 2 PCs failed to set up, unfortunately. But yeah, please enjoy the rest of the day, and thank you very much for coming. Thank you.